Hello, Suzanne. Nice to see you. I can't see how many people are online. It just says 0. So if any of you are here, just feel free to say hello like Suzanne did, so I know exactly who's here. Oh, g'day TM, nice to see you. Hi Catherine, lovely to see you. Okay, well that makes more sense. I was a little confused. I wasn't sure what to do. I was trying to search through the settings, but I'm glad that you are here with me. I need to set up my umbrella. A second. There we go. That's better. So it's a rainy day. It says 12 watching. Beautiful. Well, I have 19 booked. One of the viewers or attendees said that they will not make it, which is fine. I'll just send them a recording. But I want to thank you guys so much for being here and for joining us on this interesting tour. It should be fascinating, and there's so much to explore. There's so much to learn about Melbourne's Jewish community as we walk through a couple of Melbourne's Jewish suburbs, and I'm looking forward to covering a lot with you. G'day Judith, nice to see you. Hello Noreen, finally in. Well, as long as you're here, that's all that matters. Hello Stephanie. I'm glad that it all worked with the link thing. I'm just going to cross the road. So hello Tariq, lovely to see you. I am feeling a little bit better. Yeah, Suzanne. Yeah, it's been a rough week. It's been a rough week health-wise. You know what it's like with the flu. It doesn't go away overnight. It takes a little bit of time for the body to heal. But we're here now, and that's all that matters. I'm excited for what is to come. Oh, lovely. Hello to the Bears. Thanks for being here. To Ollie and Jimmy as well. Thanks guys, to all of you for being here. I'm sorry that I'm a minute or two late. I was a minute or two late. It was just traffic getting here was quite a challenge. But yeah, I'm excited to begin. Yeah, thanks TM. The headache has gone. So I'm back to business as usual. Back to business. It required a lot of resting and a lot of how do I put it? Wasting a lot of time. But that's just how it is. That's just, we just have to. And by wasting a lot of time, I mean just lying in bed doing nothing. To me, that's an absolute waste of time. You had problems getting the chat on. Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Sorry about that, Tariq. So, oh my God, please do, Suzanne, send me some sunshine. That would be lovely. Okay, well, without further ado, thanks to all of you for being here. Let's begin this virtual tour of Melbourne's Jewish history, and there's so much to see. Many of you attended this approximately a year and a half ago, and the routes are going to be similar, with the exception of an extra thing or two. But I'll just cover more information. I'll try to cover as much information as possible. Lots of sun. Thanks, TM. Oh, I'm so jealous. So, yeah. Yeah, I can imagine, Noreen. I can imagine. Well, it's nice to see you guys. I feel like it's been too long since we've managed to see each other. It's been an uphill journey for all of us, but we'll get there, okay? I appreciate you guys. I don't need to introduce myself. A lot of you already know me. But if you happen to have come across this tour on Eventbrite or through any other medium, then feel free to introduce yourself. But I doubt that. I'm pretty sure I know you all. Missed you too. I missed you all too. It's. Yeah, Noreen, that is true. Look, it is what it is. It is what it is. That's okay. I am so happy to have you guys here with me. Honestly, thank you so much for being here. So, let's switch. Has anyone here not attended this tour before? Is it anyone's first time attending this Jewish history tour? If it is, feel free to let us know in the comments. It would be nice to know. But, if it isn't, if it's, it doesn't matter. There's always something new to learn. And I want you to know that you can ask me any questions that your first time, Cheryl, you missed it in the past, Noreen, beautiful. Well, I hope you enjoy this one. I'll try to cover as much as I can. It's hard to cover everything, but, that's what the Q&As are for. You can ask me questions along the way and I'll endeavor to answer them all. And it's going to be a nice walk. It's very grey and cloudy today, but I hope to nonetheless regale you with history. All right, Leslie. Okay. Elaine, well, first time. Lovely to have you here. What else was I going to say? So what is to be expected from this? So firstly, we're going to be talking a little bit about Australian history. So I'll give you a little rundown of how the Jewish community began here in Australia, and then we'll transition and we'll move on to Melbourne. We'll talk a little bit about the origins of the Jewish community in Melbourne. As we're walking, I'll show you. We'll just go for a walk along this suburb. You're first as well. Beautiful. All right, thanks for letting me know, TM. I appreciate it. Hey, Ruth, it's all good. And then, we'll talk about the history. I'll show you little bits and pieces. I'll show you buildings and synagogues. And yeah, I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. It's 7:40 in the morning now, so nothing is open. I would have loved to take you into a synagogue like we did in Hobart. But at this time, nothing is open. None of the synagogues got back to me. So we have to work with what we have, basically. So I'm going to switch the camera and we'll begin this. So thanks again for being here. Thanks again for attending this. And I'm excited for, to show you a lot more. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate. Go ahead, ask. It's fine. Okay. All right. Let's switch the camera. And I just want to mention that here we are outside a place called Spirit Grow. A lot of you would have remembered this place back from the last tour that we did. And Spirit Grow is a synagogue, believe it or not. But with more emphasis on the spiritual side of Judaism. So the rabbi of this synagogue, Rabbi Zev Wolf, has a very strong spiritual connection to a variety of to a variety of aspects, Kabbalah and a lot of other things. Yes, exactly. I love the wings. We'll go check out the wings in a second. And what I love about this synagogue, and in Judaism, a synagogue can also be referred to as a shul. Shul is a Yiddish word for synagogue. Is that they focus on more than just Judaism. There's meditation. They have meditation classes, Kabbalah classes. They have psychology workshops, and I'll just show you a little bit about. And here's label. So this is the man who started the synagogue. Label Wolf, Rabbi Wolf, and but here's some of the stuff that they offer, which I found to be extremely fascinating. Spiritual psychology, which is lovely. And pleasure without guilt. Living an intentional life. So I love this. I love this shul because it's a lovely place to. It's a great place for Jews to not feel like they are regurgitating information from a Bible without understanding what they're reading. So the rabbi will sit there and he will pray with the crowd, with the attendees, and explain everything. And you actually do feel like you're communicating with a higher presence. And it's nice. I don't attend that synagogue, but my nephew, he attended. He had his bar mitzvah in this synagogue. So that was it was very interesting to attend his bar mitzvah, because what was interesting about it when we attended the service The rabbi got us to all meditate for about 5 to 10 minutes. So he got us to focus on our breathing. And then only then we started the prayer, which is very fascinating. Okay, I'm going to switch the camera again. Just check out those wings over there, as Tariq pointed out. Pretty cool, isn't it? I'm just going to catch up on... No, I've been to a lot of other countries, and there are not many synagogues like this anywhere, really. Hey, Fatima, that's okay. Now, the interesting thing is, Label Wolf, the rabbi, actually met up with the Dalai Lama, and that is what inspired him to create Spirit Grow. He met with the Dalai Lama, and he found that to be an extremely inspirational event. So, and here it says Spirit Grow. So they hired a graffiti artist to and it says, let your spirit grow. So now that inspired him. And here we have a graffiti of the Kotel, which is the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall. Okay. Question, what is the Jewish population of Melbourne? Beautiful question, lovely. So let's answer that. Let's talk a little bit more about the history. As we mosey along these streets and discuss, and as I show you, Melbourne's Jewish area. So, and here we have a cafe. Cafes everywhere. Jewish communities, no exception. Yeah, it's very sad, Leslie, that there are, oftentimes people look at me very weirdly that I'm filming a synagogue, and you get judged a little bit because there is a huge emphasis on security. So, and I understand. It's just sad that it has to get to this. Anti-Semitism is unfortunately it's just a disease. Shira. So this is called a Shira. It's also a synagogue, and it's a very inconspicuous synagogue. You would not even notice it driving by. But one of the interesting things, let me just pan a little bit to the right, about this synagogue that I found is that it's a synagogue that emphasizes singing as part of its prayer. So a vast majority of their services involve singing. It's their own style, which is interesting. So it's called a singing synagogue. So sorry. So you go to the synagogue and you prepare for worship, and then a lot of how they channel their spiritual worship is through singing, which is fascinating, and one of those things you don't see quite often. Okay, so let's begin now. Suzanne's asking, what is the population of the Jewish community here in Melbourne? So, all in all, Australia in total has about the Australian population or Jewish population, 113,000, right? With the two biggest Jewish communities located in Melbourne and in Sydney. Melbourne has the largest Jewish community in Australia, with almost 70,000 Jews living in Melbourne. And we'll talk about why Melbourne has accrued such a large number of Jews living here. But in Sydney, the population is about 50,000, and everywhere else the Jews are dispersed everywhere else. So Adelaide, Brisbane, the rest amounts to about 13,000, which is pretty cool. Now, as we are walking, we'll just head a little bit further down there until I show you the next place, but I'll talk a little bit more about the history, okay? Is this the synagogue that we just saw before, Noreen's asking, is it considered progressive? It's very interesting you say that, because it's not reform. For those who don't know, a reform synagogue is males and females sit together in modern Orthodox. The males and the females sit separately and are separated, and in prayer and in worship. But in reform synagogues, they're all sitting next to each other, a bit like a church actually. But in this case, it's interesting. It's almost like it's a modern Orthodox synagogue with a spiritual element to it. So yeah, it doesn't have a progressive reform feel to it. So the story of the Jewish community of Australia. We'll start with Australia first before we move on. And if there's anything you'd like me to stop and show you, just let me know, and I'll show you. But it actually begins in 1788 on the 26th of January. Now, to a lot of you, this date sounds familiar. That is because that is the date the first fleet arrived in Australia, in Sydney, and the first fleet of 751 convicts. They brought them all to Sydney, and about 22 of the convicts out of the 751 were actually Jewish. Sorry, just 1 second. One second. The umbrella is, there we go. So 22 roughly of the convicts were actually Jewish. And they were convicts. One of them, Joseph Levy, who was one of the convicts, he died 3 months after he arrived on shore as a convict. And he was actually the first Jew to be buried on Australian soil. So many of the Jewish convicts who arrived, they eventually settled in, and they got pardoned, and then they just settled here, and a lot of them became police officers, and productive members of society. But Joseph Levy, he got sent to Australia for committing fraud, and by the way, here we have the Beit Chabad, which is has anyone here heard of Chabad? For the non-Jewish viewers, Chabad may sound like an obscure word, but Chabad is basically almost like a Jewish. It's a Hasidic movement, right? And originates in the town of Lubavitcher in Eastern Europe, and they are known for their outreach, for their Jewish outreach. And they send Chabad members out to various parts of Australia, and they just try to re-engage the Jewish community with their culture and with their roots. They don't really focus on non-Jews. They have no interest in that, but they just want to bring the Jewish community closer to their roots and to their religion. So that's what Chabad is known for. So yeah, and they're actually one of the most popular ones. They became very popular through the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was he was like, at the time, he was almost like the Pope of Judaism. Passed away. But that was a peak period, a peak time for Chabad. Okay, let's keep walking. So, in the early 1800s, the Jewish community in Sydney, in Australia, they had Joseph Marcus establish he was one of the few convicts who was actually well versed in the Torah and in Hebrew, and he started a congregation, and he gathered approximately 30 Jews to worship with him on a regular basis, and that was actually the first unofficial Jewish synagogue. Now, here's the thing, right? Australia is known as the only, aside from Israel, Australia is the only country in the world to have had Jewish people as one of the people who founded the country. Obviously, I'm not including the Aboriginal people, who are the original people to live here. We've been here for 40,000 years. So, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the first settlers to come here. But one second. All good. So, because of that, because of the Jewish, we had a few Jewish settlers come and settle in Australia at the same time as everyone else. They were afforded equal rights aside from worship. So when it came to worship, they weren't allowed to practice Judaism, and they They were actually in many ways forced to, if they wanted to worship, they had to do it in a Christian context. Hold on a second. Oops. Oh. Okay. Okay, let's keep going. So by the end of the 1820s, oh, what's going on here? Hold on, sorry, the rain is just bear with me. 1 second, sorry guys. Okay. One second, my friends. Okay, let's keep walking. And over here we have the Indonesian church, Indonesian Uniting Church. It's pretty cool. Okay, let's keep walking. Sorry guys, 1 second, the umbrella's flying. It's a little uncomfortable. Okay. So anyway, so a vast majority of the first Jews to arrive in Australia were of Anglican origins. So they would have come from England and from the UK as convicts or as just people who were looking to settle. And as those free settlers arrived and corrected the traditions and decided to implement it in a more organized way, more rabbis started migrating. One of those rabbis was Aaron Levy, who was from London. Took him 3 months to arrive from London to Australia at the time. And the only reason he came to Australia is because he had to organize arrange a religious divorce between a Jewish man in Australia and his wife in London. So that was just quite interesting. But and as more affluent and influential Jewish immigrants arrived in Australia as regular citizens, and following a petition which was led by Joseph Barrow Montefiore, who was a very distinguished member of the government. It put a lot of pressure on the government to take more notice. So in 1831, the government allowed for Jewish worship, and the first congregation was established in Sydney. 4 years later, in 1835, Melbourne was discovered. Melbourne was discovered by John Batman, who was a free settler and an entrepreneur from Tasmania. And, oh, it's raining, the weather is so bad. Let me just get by. And, 1 second, I'm just gonna press the button. Okay, yeah. And John Batman, upon settling in Melbourne, he actually, one of his right-hand men, one of the people who joined him on the expedition, was a Jewish man by the name of Joseph Solomon. And Solomon helped him, create pasture lands and enhance the agricultural positioning of Melbourne. And he actually named one of the mountains in Melbourne after him, Mount Solomon, which is approximately a 20-minute drive from Melbourne. But eventually they changed that name to something else. But as that happened, so more migrants ended up coming. A lot of convicts ended up settling in Melbourne as Jewish convicts. But it took only 6 years. In 1841, for the influx to start taking more, becoming more noticeable. And then in 1851, gold was discovered in Melbourne, and a large influx of immigrants all over the world came, and Jews were some of them. So a lot of Jews ended up coming to. Oh, sorry. Oh, 1 second. My umbrella can't fit through there. There we go. Ay. A lot of Jews ended up migrating to Melbourne, to Victoria at the time, due to the gold rush. Now, heading closer to the 20th century, the late 1800s, the first Jews from Poland ended up arriving in Melbourne, ended up migrating to Melbourne, because it turned out to be very the Polish government at the time decided to raise taxes for urbanites, and they considered Jews to be urbanites. So a lot of Jews escaped Poland, came to Melbourne, of all places, and then they settled in Melbourne. And then Melbourne saw a rise in Eastern European jewelry. Now, with that also came a more traditional aspect. With that also came Jews who are a little more interested in embracing the folklore side of things and embracing their religion. And you had Jews who were just basically very critical of the Jews already there, because prior to the Eastern European Jews migrating, the Jews were, they assimilated. You would not have distinguished between a Jew and a non-Jew. There was no traditional cultural form of expression. It was all the same, and even how they prayed, there was none of that either. So they brought a little more of a more traditional aspect of Judaism, which is interesting. Okay, I'm trying to catch up. The comments have just popped up, so I'm sorry about that. I'm trying to catch up with the comments. So basically there were no comments, and now there are comments. So I'm just catching up. Bear with me. Let's see. Okay, does that mean that some people don't like the Jewish people? Stephanie's asking. Yeah, so that is true. Some people don't like the Jewish people. Anti-Semitism is a... Oh, sorry guys, 1 second. Oh my God, the umbrella keeps slipping out of my hands. Anti-Semitism is a just terrible, disgusting disease that seems to permeate through some societies, and it's just unfortunate. It's just very unfortunate that we experience it, and even in today's modern society, on both ends, we experience it. But I don't want to talk too much about anti-Semitism. Peter, first time on this for me, but I've been on your others. I was in Melbourne 20 years. Oh, lovely, Peter. Thanks for being here. So where are we exactly? Near Melbourne. So Fatima, we are in a suburb called Caulfield. Caulfield's one of the most Jewish suburbs it's the most Jewish suburb in Melbourne, if not even in Australia. 50% of the people who live in Caulfield are Jewish. So, yeah. Does Melbourne have trouble with anti-Semitism? Lately, Melbourne has had trouble. I'll just cover anti-Semitism very quickly. Lately, Melbourne has had some trouble with anti-Semitism. There's been a plea. There's been a rise in neo-Nazis here in Melbourne. And only a few days ago, there was a neo-Nazi rally in the city of Melbourne, because there have been calls to outlaw the Hitler salute, the Nazi salute, because there have been a few incidents over the last few months of neo-Nazis going to restaurants and going to the streets and doing the Nazi salute. Now, that is extremely triggering for Holocaust survivors who have, been through hell and back and have endured the worst the human can possibly endure only to come to a country that is meant to accept them for who they are, and then they see that happening. So there have been a lot of pleas and calls, and luckily it has been passed that you're not allowed to you can actually go to jail if you do this Nazi salute in public. And so they were protesting the fact they can't do it. So it's very sad. The head of the ADC he was on the news, and he commented that Melbourne has a bit of a problem with those neo-Nazis, but hopefully we can tackle them over time. Okay, so let's see. Elaine is asking, has there been an influx of ultra-Orthodox Jews over the past 10 or 15 years? Yes, actually, there has, Elaine. There has. The ultra-Orthodox Jewish community has grown a little bit in the past 10 to 15 years. As we are walking, we're going to head into the ultra-Orthodox neighborhood. So this is the quarter, the Jewish quarter, Leslie, yes. Is it legal for Nazis to march? Well, it's legal to protest, Leslie, but it's not legal to express yourself in certain ways because it ignites and encourages hate. And don't get me wrong, I'm in many ways a free speech absolutist. I believe in free speech and freedom of expression. But there is an argument that can be made that doing the Nazi salute in public can incite violence, because it ultimately, what does it mean? It means that you are supporting an ideology that encourages people to hate another group of people and celebrates the deaths of people. So yeah, it is pretty bad. Okay, now where were we? But hold on, sorry, just 1 second. The rain is just outrageous today. Just bear with me. Yes, absolutely, Leslie. The far right's absolutely terrible. Anti-Semitism comes on both ends as well. You got anti-Semitism on the far left as well, and on the far right. So anti-Semitism is one of those things that you experience everywhere. Jews cannot escape it. So, okay, let's keep walking. So yeah, but there is a huge problem with neo-Nazis here. Okay, so anyway, in that time of the gold rush, when people from all over here we have Ontario Street, and I'm going to show you something that has something to do with this street, and we'll talk about that in a second. I did not expect the rain. I'm going to show you in a second. I'm going to show you one of Australia's most beautiful mansions that actually housed Holocaust survivors during the 50s and 60s and 70s. So let me just. So the Jewish population grew from 300 to 3,000 during the gold rush periods. And then the first synagogue here in Melbourne. Oh, wait a second. I just realized, 1 second. That's better. The first synagogue in Melbourne was actually established in 1847. So, yeah. And by the way, feel free to ask me questions as we go. Okay. Now, there was a period in which Looks like the camera is wet. Oh, okay. Let me see if I can clean it. It is autumn. We are transitioning into winter now. So yeah. I hope the camera's okay for you guys. It's not easy with all this rain, and my umbrella is flying out of my hands. Okay, so during World War I, around that time, there was a lack of, how do I put it, like cultural activity, and there was a lack of motivation in the Jewish community here in Melbourne, and it was a problem because, you know, just like the earth needs renewal every year, a society needs sources of energy and something that'll give them that, you know, something that'll help them avoid becoming stagnant. And during that time, during World War I, Jewish migration, believe it or not, has actually stopped at that time. And then there was a guy called Israel Sher. He was an important figure during that period. And at the time, he said that the Jewish cultural life was actually not progressing the way he wanted it to. And there were a variety of reasons for that, right? Because at the time the activists weren't putting much work into it. The newspaper wasn't really evolving and developing, and the community needed something extraordinary to break them out of this state of apathy, right? And it actually happened when there was a guy called Perez Hirschbein, who was a writer. And thanks, Noreen. Yeah, I'm trying my best. Oh, 1 second. Oh. 1 second. Is that okay for you guys? Yeah. There you go. So Peretz Hirschbein, who was a writer, and his wife, who was Esther Schumacher, she was a poet. They came to Australia as guests. They were traveling, but they were invited by the Jewish community to come and visit. And at the time, he was a very well-known Jewish writer. He was from Poland. He wrote some amazing plays at the time. And so at the end of the 1920s, he was invited to come to visit Melbourne. And it became... And a lot of... Israel Sher, one of the focal points or the keys to the community suddenly being revived, and it energized everyone. It brought the people back together. It made them put aside their differences. The Jewish community was very divided in the late 20s, but it made them put aside their differences and work towards a common goal. The visit was a very special occasion, and I helped them find interest again in the religion. So buffering. Yes, I'm sorry it's buffering. I don't know why it's buffering. I'm going to show you something pretty cool now. So bear with me. But the reason Hirschbein ignited the Jewish community was because that they really wanted to, give him the best experience possible, and that really brought back their love for our religion. Okay, let's keep walking. As you can tell, the kids are all going to school. Signal okay now. Okay, yeah. Okay. I want to show you something very cool. Just give me a second. We're going to turn right. So after okay, I just want to show you this mansion. This is a slight detour, but this mansion over here was actually used to house, it's called Labasa Mansion, one of the most beautiful mansions in Australia. And built in the mid 1800s, mid 19th century. And was known as Ontario Mansion initially. 35 bedrooms. And yeah, so this mansion was at some point owned by 4 Jewish people, Jewish men, and then they used it to, again, accommodate, house, and shelter Holocaust survivors. And it's quite a beautiful mansion. If you ever come to Melbourne, it's open every Sunday. It's got they open the doors and they let people in. And it is quite beautiful. I wish there was a feature in which I could share photos with you in here. But it is, yeah, just a stunning piece of our city. Oh. So, it is absolutely stunning. Yeah, absolutely. While we're on the topic, let's talk a little bit more about World War the post World War II. What is it used for now? So, good question, Leslie. So, when it was first purchased, it belonged to one person. What is his name? Paul Alexander, something like that. He was a man from Ontario, and he got them to build it. So they originally called it Ontario Mansion, but then it got bought by other people, and now it is used as a museum in a way because of its exquisite, stunning, alluring beauty. People go to this mansion every Sunday and they open the doors up, and it's just a museum of sorts. As you can tell, it's designed in French Revival style architecture, but is quite stunning. So it doesn't it doesn't house people anymore. And as you can tell, you can use it for photography, functions, weddings. So it's third Sunday of each month. It's pretty cool. Okay, let's keep going. So let's talk a little bit about the Jewish. I'll touch a little bit about. I'll finish off with the history, and then we'll talk a little bit about the Jewish community here in Melbourne. So after World War II, there are about one sec, lawnmower guy, the leaf blowing guy. There are about 18,000 Jewish immigrants came to Melbourne, and that doubled the size of the Jewish community here. And most of the Jews who came to Melbourne were from Poland or Eastern Europe, and they had a huge influence on Jewish life. They came with this desire to preserve the Jewish tradition. You're welcome. Oh, thanks for saying that. I appreciate you guys appreciating it. So with those migrants came this strong desire to. Hold on a second, guys. I just want to see if there's a tram coming. I might have to jump on a tram. Let me just check where the latest. I say let's just jump on a tram. This rain is just ridiculous. Alright, let's keep walking. Hold on. 1 second. Okay. So anyway, as Melbourne grew, those new suburbs developed, and the Jewish immigrants settled into those newly built suburbs and houses, and everything, and establish their own areas, like this area that we're in now. Now, there are approximately, to give you some context, there are approximately 60 different places of worship here in Melbourne. Oops. There we go. Okay, we're going to step onto a tram for two stops, and then I'll show you the next place. I just need a break from the rain, so just bear with me for a quick moment. So I'll jump on a tram. I didn't expect there to be rain, but that's Melbourne for you. Okay. Just give me a second. That's definitely not a light shower. There was a lot of rain. So I just need to step on the tram. So anyway, there are approximately 60 congregations here in Melbourne, and there are a lot of, there is a very ignited sense of community here, and a lot of, hold on, we'll talk about it in a second. We'll get off at the next stop. So let me just pull the buzzer. Sorry about that. The rain stuffed things up a little bit. So the reason I've been fumbling a lot is that my umbrella is broken a little bit. Okay, we're gonna get off here. Okay, cool. Oh! Oh! Oh, hold on. There we go. Okay. Okay, guys. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep walking. Now, there are so many Jewish schools here as well. So, Suzanne, you asked me about a Jewish newspaper. There is a Jewish newspaper here. It's called the Australian Jewish News, which is an excellent source for the Jewish community to understand what's going on. And it's a great way, you know, there are so many Jewish organizations, a lot of youth organizations as well, that, you know, bring the community together. There's August, which is the Australian Jewish Students Union, which is, you know, in universities. And you have kids from Jewish schools who are in universities, like many of the famous universities. And it's a great place for, if you're Jewish and you're at a university, you can just feel like you belong to something, which is nice. Over here you have, this is Beit Rivka, and this is a girls' college. There are a variety of schools, so this one is a very religious school, but then you have schools like Bialik College, which is a little more secular. You have Mount Scopus College, which is a little more, I'm just going to be very careful when I point the camera at schools. I don't want to give people the wrong idea. People can be very... you have Yeshiva College, which we're going to walk past Yeshiva College in a minute. Yeshiva College is also very religious. And you have some colleges which encourage students to learn and speak Yiddish, like Shalom Aleichem. Let's see. Yes, exactly, Tariq, 100%. Do Jewish kids have to go to Jewish schools? Okay, so what really makes the Melbourne Jewish community, it's a good question, Suzanne. the Melbourne Jewish community is so unique is that there is this huge need to stay connected to their Jewish roots. So a majority of kids who were born Jewish actually there's a huge, a lot of support for Jewish families to send their kids to Jewish schools. But they can go to public schools, and a lot of Jews also go to public schools. But there are so many schools. There are over 20 different Jewish schools here in Melbourne. So, yeah. So, good question, Peter. So there are several Jewish neighborhoods here. So this is one of them, and we're just stepping now into a new neighborhood called Balaclava. And Balaclava is an ultra-Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. But there are a variety. There's Caulfield, which is where we were at before. There's Balaclava, St Kilda East. There is, and recently, a lot of the outer suburbs, like Frankston, which is a little far, it's approximately a 45-minute drive from Melbourne, has a population of, has seen a huge influx of Jewish immigration, especially, but particularly Orthodox Jews. So, yeah. Let's see. I saw the old mikvah in the beautiful Melbourne City Baths on Swanston Street. Oh, yes, absolutely. When was that? Okay, so I'm going to show you one more. I'm going to show you a synagogue, and then unfortunately the rain makes it very hard for me to show you more. Good question. So, interestingly enough, and uniquely here in Melbourne, the Reform community is not very big, not very prominent. So we don't really have a large focus on Reform prayer here in Melbourne. Reform and conservative, conservative is almost basically non-existent, and in many ways they amalgamate the two, Reform and conservative. For those who don't know, Reform Judaism is a very, very progressive branch of Judaism, and conservative is it's also progressive, but it's a little close to the traditional, and then you have Orthodox, modern Orthodox. I'm just going to walk down there. Very disappointing with this weather. Okay. So yeah, we do have a very big, or relatively sized, a decently sized Reform synagogue called Temple Beit, and it's it's our main Reform synagogue, but there are not many here in Melbourne. Unlike in the USA and in Germany, Reform is a much bigger, a much bigger way of Jewish worship, or more prominent. But here in Melbourne, it's not quite it's not that big. Sorry. There we go. Oh, and this is Yeshiva College. This is an all-boys religious school over there. So Australia is a democratic country. All citizens, as you know, it's a democratic country. All citizens are, whether they're settled or disadvantaged, we all have the same rights here in Australia, equal rights. In the past, there were doubts about newcomers. We had some extremely bigoted policies, like the White Australia policy. But things have changed now. The government and the media have worked tirelessly to educate Australians and help immigrants settle quickly in our country. I'm just going to quickly cross. And in the past, there was this belief that a lot of Jewish immigrants and should assimilate quickly and abandon their old cultural heritage. But recently, there's been a shift in thinking, and there are a lot of leaders from major political parties. Our two major political parties are the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, and they believe that you should embrace your culture, bring your culture and embrace it. Don't try to abandon it. Don't try to fit in. I mean, assimilation is important, but also, embracing and owning your culture is also even more important. And with time, this idea of cultural pluralism is gaining more acceptance. So discrimination against Jews is basically non-existent here in Australia. Jews have equal rights, have the exact same rights as everyone else. And aside from a few terrible bad apples, Jews have it pretty good here. Jewish, and we've had a few prominent figures actually, Jewish. Hold on. Australia has been home to a few famous Jewish settlers. One of which, sorry guys. Sorry, this hurts my back. So yeah, there have been a few Jews who played huge roles in contributing to Australia's society. One of them is Sir Isaac Isaacs, who was a creator of the Australian Constitution. He was the first Governor General of Australia. He represented the British Crown. And another one was Sir John Monash, who was a general, one of our most decorated and celebrated war generals in World War I. Then you have other guys like Rabbi Joseph Goodnick, who was the president of a football team and a successful business person. And then you have, what's his name? John Gandel, who's a philanthropist and public figure. Any idea why Reform Judaism is not prevalent in Melbourne? It's a great question, Peter. So it's because that Melbourne has embraced a very traditional approach to Judaism, as opposed to trying to assimilate. The focus of the Jewish community here in Melbourne has not been on, obviously we assimilate, but it's been on truly highlighting and embracing and showcasing the traditional aspect of Judaism. And whereas the idea with Reform Judaism is that the whole idea is to blend in. That's why Reform Judaism was created, to help Jews blend in and adapt to modern day society. Whereas the Jewish community here is a lot more traditional and more fervently just follows and the religion. And here we have the Sassoon Shul synagogue, which today looks a little underwhelming because of the rain and the traffic, but it's actually one of the most beautiful synagogues in Melbourne. I would love to take you in sometime, but it's quite a beautiful synagogue, and unfortunately we can't get in because they can be a little funny about these things. But in the mid-50s, there was a whole new wave of Jewish immigrants from Egypt and Greece, and a few other Middle Eastern societies who arrived in Melbourne. Enough for the community to form its own congregation. And they came from the Sephardic Jewish tradition. Sephardic Judaism is basically Jews who come from those countries, from Turkey, from Greece, from Egypt, from Mediterranean countries and Northern African countries. And so they decided they wanted their own, and they have their own form of praying and their own way of worshipping, and they wanted their own Sephardic synagogue. So they created one in 1965. 1977. And it was inaugurated by our former Prime Minister, Malcolm Fraser. And over time, it became a very popular part or place for the Sephardic community to worship. So, and then come together as their community grew. So, yeah. By 1994, this synagogue was known as Sassoon Yehuda Synagogue. And it was designed by a very prominent Jewish architect called Ben Alexander. And here's an interesting fact for you. The president of this synagogue is a woman, which sets an excellent example for places of worship all over the world, especially in the Orthodox Jewish branch, which seems to be a little more male-dominated. Which is, one of the things I love about Reform Judaism is that they don't really discriminate against genders. So, yeah, interesting fact. This has been very tough with the rain. Anyway, if you guys have any questions, now is a good time to ask. I'm sorry this has been very fumbly. Are there women rabbis? Great question, Suzanne. So, yes, there are women rabbis, but you know how I was saying there's Reform Judaism, Conservative Judaism, and Orthodox or Modern Orthodox Judaism. So in Reform and Conservative Judaism, I think it's Reform Judaism, women can be rabbis. Not just women, but queer people, people who are a part of the LGBTQ community can become rabbis. And so it's lovely. Everyone's, there is no discrimination there. So you'll find a lot of, actually we do have a female rabbi here in Melbourne. One of our Reform synagogues has a female rabbi, which is great. Hi. How are you going? Good. What are you filming? I'm not filming. I'm just chatting. All right. People. It's just you're near schools here. Yeah. You're not allowed to be filming near here at all. So. I'm not filming the schools. It's on me. I'm not filming anyone. So, yeah. Would you like me to leave? It's up. I'd prefer you to go the opposite direction with them while the schools will start. So can I finish this and then I'll walk off? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. So just to give you an idea of how tight the security is here, they're very, very. As I was saying to you before, it's very awkward when you film schools, when you film Jewish institutions. It can be very awkward because then people start thinking, that was a security person, and they start thinking that you are acting in a dodgy way. Sad that it has to get to this. So I'm just going to end it here. Otherwise they won't let me walk past the school. It is what it is. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm sorry, I know I could have probably done better, but it was very hard and distracting with the rain and mud everywhere. So if you have any questions, it is the reality of today's world, Noreen, 100%. If you have any questions, you can ask more questions. You can ask as many questions as you like, by all means. Thank you. So guys, I hope to see you. I believe some of you are attending Cook's Cottage tomorrow. You're welcome, Noreen. You're welcome, Judith. How are rabbis selected? That's a good question. So rabbis are usually elected, and they're selected by a committee, usually. And, so basically, let me just... sorry, yes, Peter, I believe so. I think so, yeah. Okay, guys, so we'll speak soon. I have to run. It's very wet. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you soon. Take care, guys. Take care. had done this on a Monday, it would have been better, eh? Definitely. Would not have had a car, and it would have been tougher. Nah, but it would have been better because it would have been good weather. Who the fuck was that? Oh, Michaela. Stop it.